They disappeared into the night, one by one, young and full of life, until their bodies were found discarded like trash. For years, this monster would walk among us, smiling and blending in. This is a disturbing, bone-chilling tale of Oscar Ray Bolin, where charm had masked pure evil and justice arrived far too late. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I hope you're all doing so well. Welcome back to another true crime and makeup episode. Oh yeah. Today, as you've heard in the intro, I am bringing you the case of Oscar Ray Bolin. This man looks like a weirdo, he is a weirdo, he looks like a loser, and he is an absolute loser. Before we dive into this case, if you are new here, hi, my name is Anna. I post true crime content on a Wednesday and Sunday. I do true crime and makeup and also sit down true crime videos. So if true crime is your jam, I highly suggest you subscribe, get the notification bell on, because I'm here for you every single week. Any details you need will all be listed in the description down below, but without any further rambling and any further ado, let's get into the horrifying case of Oscar Ray Bolin, dubbed the Carnival Killer. Now, I hope and pray that everyone here can just ignore the sight of me, because I'm going out tonight, so when I edit this I'm going to be very hungover, and by the time you watch this I will probably be lying on my sofa currently dying. So good luck to me on that, because I am the worst hungover person in the world. But where I'm going with this is I need to obviously put on a bit of tan. My hair, very frizzy, but I'm not going to put any product in it until I'm going out. Otherwise my hair won't style. So enough of that, more about the case. Oscar Ray Bolin, POS, a weird looking guy. He is genuinely someone who looks like a weirdo and a loser. And both of these facts would be completely correct. So if you've ever seen this man in the street prior to him being the POS that he is in this case, and you thought, oh, he looks like a loser weirdo, don't feel bad, because you were completely right. So Oscar Ray Bolin, he was born on January the 22nd of 1962, and he was born in Portland, Indiana. Now, his family, they were a family of labourers. They were carnival workers, which, as you can imagine, carnival workers, they always travel for work. So they would move between state to state to state, and I mean this guy lived in several states, which honestly contributed to his already turbulent childhood, because it was just met with so much loneliness, anti-socialism. Is that a word? If it's not, we're going to make it one. But he could not form any deep, meaningful friendships or relationships because he was never ever getting to settle down. The minute Oscar made friends, the family's moving again. So he kind of got to a point where he thought, what is the point? Why should I try and make friends when quite clearly I'm never going to have lasting friendships? Now, Oscar Ray Bolin, he would later state that his father, Oscar Ray Bolin Sr., he would beat him furiously. He would beat him with his fists, he would beat him with objects. It could be for the tiniest mistake that he made, or no mistake at all. Oscar Sr., he just loved throwing hands. Not to men his own size, of course, but to a young child who he can bully. That was his cup of tea. And not only would he beat Oscar brutally, he would also do it very frequently. There was rarely a day that would go by where Oscar wouldn't incur some sort of physical or verbal damage from his own father. And you're maybe wondering, where is Oscar's mother when all of this is happening? Well, she was described as being someone who was a lot more passive, and she just liked to keep herself to herself. And when Oscar Sr. was beating on Oscar Jr., she very much thought, this is a man's thing. I'm not going to get involved. This is father-son stuff. Is it really though, hun? Is that father-son stuff? Watching your son be beaten by a grown man when he's only a child? And Oscar Sr., he would always beat Oscar Jr. in front of his mum. And not once did his mum try to intervene. Not once did she ask this man to stop or tell him to stop. And I get that she might have feared Oscar Sr. herself, but this is your child. There has to be a line. There has to be a moment when you think, hold up, my child should not be going through this. I need to do something. But she seemed to just sit back, let it happen, and she never really had any emotional reaction to it. And honestly, Oscar Ray Bolin Jr., he was just no right from the offset. As a young child, he showed such a great deep interest in animal cruelty. And it wasn't him thinking like, let me save the animals, let me stop animal cruelty. It was, let me inflict pain on poor innocent animals and I'll enjoy it. So much so that he would chase down cats, dogs, stray animals on the street just to try and hurt them. That would give him like his daily fix if he could inflict pain on another innocent creature. And alongside this horrific trait, there was another trait that wasn't too favourable, and that was the fact that he was obsessed with having control and dominance over everyone and everything. And if at any point he felt like he wasn't in control, he wasn't the dominant figure, this is when he would become extremely angry and agitated. Now, when it came to his academic side, how he did in school, I mean, listen, Bolin was riding the struggle bus. He wasn't good with academics. I mean, he wasn't even good at attending class. He was described as being incredibly truant, which in Scotland, we would say if you skip class, we call that dogging school. And know the kind of dogging that you're probably thinking of, you dirty dogs, okay? Just dogging school means skipping class, skipping school, maybe going into town for the day, doing a wee bit of shopping, you know, things that you shouldn't really be doing when you're meant to be in class. But in Scotland, that was dogging it. You'd say to someone, are you going to dog it today? I mean, that phrase in itself, said to the wrong person who doesn't understand it, that could be a criminal offence right there. Anyway, but not only was his education suffering because of his home life and the constant moving around, not getting to settle, it was also very much impacted by the fact that he was never there. You know, how are you going to learn if you're not present to learn? And he wasn't up for doing any homeschooling. Bolin, he would regularly run away from home, and he said that this was to avoid the violence and the chaotic environment that he was living in. But every single time he ran away, he'd just be brought right back. And his mother, she deemed him to be such a flight risk that she started walking him to the bus stop for his school bus. But it wasn't enough to walk him there. She would force Oscar Ray Bolin to wear a dog leash and be taken to the bus stop via dog leash. Like, it looks like she's taking her dog out for a walk, but the dog's actually her child. And this is honestly just so humiliating, because you can probably imagine what other children would say, the kind of slaughtering that you would get verbally from other peers when they see you being walked to the school bus on a leash. And then not only that, the school bus doors open and your mum's got to like unclip your wee collar and stuff like that. Nah. So when Oscar Ray Bolin was only 15 years old in 1977 in Ohio, he would have his very first run-in with good old Johnny Law. And he would be caught for theft, he would be arrested, and you would hope and pray that someone being caught and arrested at the age of 15, that would scare them straight. But no, for Oscar Ray Bolin, the fact that he had been caught and arrested, it only seemed to escalate his crimes even further. Bolin would continue having many run-ins with the law for a lot of petty crimes, including petty theft. He wasn't ready to leave that behind. It was like his favourite hobby. And he would also exhibit very aggressive and disturbing behaviour, especially toward women. Let us live. Now, it was stated that in his adolescence, Bolin had went through a number of psychiatric evaluations to try and see what the hell was wrong with him and why he hated women so much and why he wanted to hurt animals and stuff. And when these evaluations were conducted, it said that he had a very deep emotional disturbance. It would also state that he struggled greatly with impulse control and also his anger management. So in the 1980s, Bolin decides he needs some new scenery, he needs some new people, and he just needs to get away from his family, to be honest. So he would move to Florida. Whilst he's here, he would get a multitude of odd jobs. And these things that he was doing, like, they were fine. They paid his bills, but he didn't see himself doing them long term or full time. And honestly, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. In fact, I'm still wearing the t-shirt because I'm still in like my job that, you know. So we're going to fast forward 2 years to 1982 when somehow, and I don't know how, right? The guy must have had a really nice aftershave because somehow this loser weirdo, he's able to land himself a girlfriend, and this girlfriend was Cheryl Hafner. Both of them were still young at the time that they got into this relationship, and as these people always do, Oscar showed the best parts of himself to Cheryl at first because you've got to get people through the door. You know, you've got to make them think that you're this great, honourable person when really you're an absolute piece of crap. And he made Cheryl believe that he was the perfect man, he would be the perfect boyfriend, potentially the perfect husband. But as we know, once these people feel like they have you, they'll show you exactly who they are. And 9 times out of 10, it's not pretty. And soon into the relationship, Cheryl would witness Oscar's true colours. And if you're wondering, Anna, how bad did it get? I'm going to tell you, it got pretty damn bad. In 1982, the same year that they started dating, Cheryl had to report Oscar to the authorities for kidnapping her. He kidnapped her, drove her around Tampa for hours on end, refusing Cheryl her insulin for her diabetes, a medication that literally keeps her alive, and he just kept driving, refusing her medication until he decided he was done. Until he was like, do you know what, I actually want to go home, so therefore you can go home. And Bolin would be arrested for false imprisonment and kidnapping, but these charges would later be dropped. And despite this horrific ordeal that Cheryl had suffered through, she wound up going back to Bolin. And the pair even got married in Hillsborough County in 1983, just a year after they had started dating and after he had kidnapped her. And you can probably guess that this marriage was just filled with manipulation and control on Bolin's part. Very quickly, Cheryl, she was under his complete control and dominance, just the way that Bolin wanted it. She was so intimidated by this man, and she would just do everything she possibly could to make him happy because, well, we see what happens when he's not happy. I know a lot of people will think, well, you know, why did she stay with him? Why stay with him if he's such an animal, if he's such a monster? But we can never judge unless we've been in that situation ourselves, because these manipulators, these controlling abusers, they have a way of reeling people back in and making them believe their every single word. They have a way of twisting the narrative for you to feel bad for them and you feel like you're the one in the wrong. So no judgment on Cheryl taking him back and winding up getting married to him, because this is what these freaks do best. Cheryl completely devoted herself to this man in the hopes that it would keep him happy and it would keep her safe by not winding him up. But she was so devoted to this monster that she would also be complicit in some of the evil crimes he would commit. Because only 3 years later, Oscar Ray Bolin, he would start hunting and murdering women throughout Tampa, Florida. 25-year-old Natalie Blanche Holley, who was actually better known as Blanch to her friends and family, she was described as being a very kind, very beautiful, very well-liked young woman. She was described by her friends and family as being so incredibly headstrong and so very intelligent, and she was currently working a job at a fried chicken place in Tampa, Florida. On the night of January the 25th of 1986, Natalie had just finished off her shift at the restaurant, and it was around 1 a.m. when she was locking up the restaurant for the night and then heading over to her vehicle when devastatingly she would be intercepted by Oscar Ray Bolin, who would abduct her. It's just so sad, but hours after she had been abducted, her body would be found in an overgrown orange grove by a morning jogger. And it was very clear that this young, beautiful woman had been stabbed to death. Now, the medical examiner, they had stated by looking at Natalie's body that the killer, the violence that he had used on her was so frenzied and excessive. Her car would later be found abandoned, and an eyewitness at the time had stated that they seen a man in a pickup truck near the scene. Police, they investigate Natalie's car, they try to see if they can find any evidence, but nothing turns up from her vehicle. And the witness testimony of seeing a man in a pickup truck close to the scene, that led to no leads whatsoever because they hadn't got a look at whoever was in this pickup truck. So they didn't really have any proper description to go off of. And with no leads, Natalie's case would soon go cold, leaving her family absolutely devastated and heartbroken, begging and pleading with the police to not give up on her. And it left a community of people terrified. And then we have 17-year-old Stephanie Collins. Now, this young woman, she was just incredible. She was really popular within her high school, and this was due to the kind of person that she was. She wasn't one of those popular girls that was like a mean girl. She was popular because she was so kind to every single person that she met. She was also an aspiring musician, she was in the school chorus, she was really just thriving, and everyone would just be absolutely devastated when they learned that she had been murdered. Her and her family, they had only been in Tampa, Florida for 3 years. They moved to Tampa, Florida thinking this was going to be the happiest years of their life, that they were going to find their forever home and settle down, and the friends that Stephanie would make here would be friends for life. But no one could have guessed that being here, her life would be cut short. Stephanie's friends remember her as someone who just had this really intense desire to be happy. But not only did she have the intense desire to be happy, she also wanted to make sure that every single person she loved was also happy. They said that Stephanie was very unique. She had this intense thirst and desire for adventure. On November the 5th of 1986, Stephanie was finishing up her shift at the local drugstore when suddenly she would just vanish. Now, soon after she had disappeared, her friends and family, they knew right away that something was wrong, and they immediately reported her missing to the police. That was how sure they were that something was not right, that something bad has potentially happened. Now, of course, search parties were conducted. Her friends and family especially, they conducted searches everywhere they possibly could. They were not giving up. They were doing everything they could to find this young woman with no luck. And then just 1 month later, on December the 5th of 1986, Stephanie's body would be found wrapped in sheets, wrapped in towels, off the side of Morris Bridge Road. This young girl had been brutally stabbed to death, and her skull had been completely crushed. And as if this day wasn't devastating enough, as if finding this young 17-year-old girl's body wasn't horrifying enough, another young woman would be abducted. Teri Lynn Matthews, she was a very generous, incredibly loving human being. She always wanted to be around family and friends, but especially her family. And she used to spend her weekends helping to look after the family greyhounds, as well as also looking after her miniature schnauzer named Heidi. That little dog was Teri's life. She had a very adventurous spirit, so much so that she was working toward becoming a certified scuba diver. Crazy. Now, during the day, Teri, she worked as a bank clerk, and at night, she was spending any free time she had teaching herself sign language so she could better communicate with those at her work who were hearing impaired. She just wanted them to feel more included, more seen, and to feel like people were making an effort. And as I'm sure you can tell from just that statement alone regarding Teri, She was incredibly thoughtful, she was so empathetic, and honestly, I think we could all do with being a little bit more like Teri. On the evening of December the 4th of 1986, Teri Lynn Matthews, who was just 26 years old at the time, she had told her mother that after work she was going to go out for dinner with a work colleague by the name of Gary. Her and Gary had been dating, they had actually been speaking about their future together, so things were getting pretty serious. Now Teri did say she would be home later that evening. She told her mum not to wait up, but of course our mum did. I mean, I think we can all relate to mums and dads waiting up and us getting in because they worry about our whereabouts. And that evening, when it got to 2:30 a.m. and Teri's mum was still waiting up for her, she knew something wasn't right. This was not like Teri. Teri didn't just not come home and not let her mum know where she was. Devastatingly, Teri Lynn Matthews, it turned out that she had been intercepted by Bolin when she was leaving a post office. Now, the next morning, her car was found outside this post office. The engine was still running, but Teri was nowhere to be seen. And again, just hours later, Teri's body would be found on a nearby rural road, and she was wrapped up in a sheet that had said St. Joseph's Hospital. Teri had multiple stab wounds, she had been brutally bludgeoned around her head, her throat had been slit, she was shoeless, and also the clothes that she was wearing were completely soaked through, despite there not being any rain whatsoever at this time. And honestly, I was shocked, but at the same time, was I shocked? Because I didn't really feel surprised. But the police were investigating these 3 murders as completely separate incidents, despite all the similarities in the way that these women were abducted, where they were when they were abducted, and also the injuries that they had received to cause their death. But no, they're investigating them separately, no connection whatsoever. And yet again, these cases are just going cold. The minute they're open, it's like they're shutting again. There's no leads, there's no witnesses coming forward to say that they've seen anything. And yet again, these families are begging, they're doing everything that they can, everything in their power, to try and find who did this to their loved ones. But the police gave up very quick. And then we have Deborah Diane Stow. Deborah was only 30 years old when she would be targeted by Bolin and his cousin Douglas Tedrow. Yep, he's bringing the family into it, making this a whole family affair. They targeted her while she was outside a convenience store in Greenville of Texas. He's crossing states now, he's mixing things up. The pair had overpowered Deborah, they forced her into Oscar Ray Bolin's truck, they drove her around for hours on end, and they raped her inside the truck. After this rape was finished, Deborah was then strangled to death. And at this point, Bolin's just thinking, you know what, I kind of liked having an accomplice. It was less lonely. It felt like a day out, like a nice activity to do with a group. I'm going to bring in more people. And on November the 18th of 1987, this loser would bring 2 accomplices along to attack a 20-year-old woman. They would abduct and rape this 20-year-old woman at gunpoint in Toledo, Ohio. After this rape was finished, Bolin had attempted to shoot this young woman dead, but luckily, the gun had jammed. Now when the gun jammed, Bolin started to panic, he doesn't know what to do, and he actually lets this young woman go. She was able to flag down a driver of a vehicle who pulled over, allowed her to get in the car, and then drove her to the police station so she could identify her sick attackers. This young woman, she had been able to provide such critical details in identifying this monster. She described exactly what he looked like, exactly what he was wearing, the vehicle he was driving, the interior, the exterior, the model. She had just soaked in so much information and had mentally noted it all in her head. Now, once the police in Toledo, Ohio had this information, they very quickly got to work in identifying who had done this to this young woman. So they're looking through their records and they're trying to see who could this look like, who would drive this vehicle. And up pops a face of Oscar Ray Bolin. He was an exact match identity-wise how he looked, and the vehicle he had also matched the vehicle described by the young woman to a T. And not only this, but he had quite the criminal record, which made him a very likely suspect. But thankfully, he would be arrested, charged and convicted for kidnapping and rape. He would be sentenced to 22 to 75 years in Ohio. But this was not the end. So during the trial for this case in 1989 is when the marriage between Cheryl and Oscar would completely deteriorate. Cheryl would wind up divorcing him, she went on to meet someone else and she would remarry. And this new husband of Cheryl's, he would play a crucial role in bringing this monster to justice. Cheryl, she confided in her new husband about her ex-husband. She told him about all the abuse that she had faced at his hands, the verbal abuse that she had faced, the vile stuff that he spat out his mouth at her. And then she told him a bombshell secret that she had been holding on to for years. Cheryl told her new husband that her ex-husband Oscar Ray Bolin had told her he had committed multiple murders of multiple women. The minute Cheryl's new husband had heard this, he immediately springs into action. He says, "We can't keep this to ourselves. This is young women's lives who have been taken by this monster. He needs to face justice and punishment for what he did." He says to Cheryl that we have to go to the police. There is no other option. We need to tell them what we know. And he immediately called the tip line and told them everything. And once Cheryl had come forward, there was many other witnesses that would come forward. Like I said, he was starting to make these murders a family affair. So there was a fair few witnesses coming out of the woodwork. At Bolin's trial, Cheryl would testify that she had been with Bolin before he had kidnapped Natalie and had also helped him dispose of evidence. And then Bolin's half-brother, he came forward to testify and he said that he witnessed Bolin beat Teri Matthews and even attempt to drown her with a garden hose. And again, I know these people are probably scared of this guy because he's a murderer, but he did nothing to try and stop this. Bolin's cousin then comes forward, he testifies and he confesses that he had actually aided Bolin in the abduction of Deborah Diane Stow, the 30-year-old woman who was raped and strangled, but he was adamant that it was Bolin who wanted to abduct her, raped her, and the one who strangled her. And honestly, like, thanks for coming forward, but you're complicit in that. Obviously, with Deborah's death, that occurred in the state of Texas. Texas prosecutors, they decided that they weren't going to pursue any convictions for Deborah's murder because he was already facing multiple convictions in Florida. I think they were worried that if they tried to get it there, it might mess up the case. I'm not entirely sure. Obviously, they have Deborah in mind when this justice is being served. But I do kind of wish that Deborah had got her individual justice. Now, it wouldn't just be witness testimony that would get the conviction. There was also physical evidence that would be re-examined and linked back to Bolin. In the case of Stephanie Collins, there was a semen stain on her clothing, and this would be re-examined and this would be tested against Bolin's semen, which was a DNA match. In the Teri Matthews case, the sheet that she had been wrapped up in that said St. Joseph's Hospital, Cheryl had confirmed that she was working at St. Joseph's Hospital at the time this had happened, and she had brought a sheet home, and this same sheet she had witnessed Bolin bring back after committing the murder. And also the tyre tracks, can't talk when I do a lip liner, let me just say this, the tyre tracks at the location where Teri Lynn Matthews' body had been found directly matched the tow truck that Oscar Ray Bolin had been driving at that time from his employer. So they had track marks, everything was lining up. Honestly, like, slam dunk. Now, other witnesses had also come forward and they had concluded that Oscar Ray Bolin, he had actually washed Teri's body, and that is why when they found her, her clothes were soaking despite there being no rainfall. Then in the case of Stephanie Collins, Bolin's half-brother, he had testified that he had actually been the one to help him dispose of Stephanie's body. Now, between the physical evidence that they had, the DNA and also the eyewitness testimonies, they knew that they had their guy. So in July of 1991, Oscar Ray Bolin, he would be served a death sentence for the murder of Natalie Holley. He was later sentenced to death again for the murder of Stephanie Collins, and then he would receive a third death sentence for the murder of Teri Matthews. And honestly, when I heard this, I thought, great, but is an execution date actually going to come? Because as we know, a lot of these people tend to die on death row because there's never an execution date set in place. But I'm happy to tell you, this monster would actually receive an execution date. So Oscar Ray Bolin, the day before his execution, he would be interviewed by some kind of TV media, whatever. And when he was talking to them, he was basically saying that he was innocent. He had been framed, blah, 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 don't care. And he had stated to this interviewer that his execution would actually be a release from the punishment he has received. These people, they test my patience every day. So on January the 17th of 2016, not even that long ago, at 10:16 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Oscar Ray Bolin would be executed via lethal injection. Yay! And he was the first person to be executed in the United States in 2016. Congrats. And also, I found details on his last meal, and this stuff always fascinates me, so I figured I'd tell you. But his last meal was ribeye steak, wouldn't be my choice, baked potato, salad, garlic bread, lemon meringue pie, and a Coca-Cola to top it off. And of course, as always, before I close out the case today, I do just want to send my thoughts, prayers, love and strength to every single family member that was affected by these cases. And I just hope and pray that the victims of these cases rest in peace. And I'm just devastated that so many young women lost their lives to this despicable, atrocious, horrific, evil monster. But my loves, that is it for this true crime and makeup episode. I hope it's one you've never heard of before, or if it is, hopefully, as always, I've been able to provide details that you might not have known. If you do enjoy my content, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Get the notification bell on so you don't miss when I upload on a Wednesday and Sunday. Any details you need regarding me, myself and I, they will all be listed down below in the description. But I think that's it for today. Please, please, please remember, be a good person. Do not be a bad person. Stay safe, look after each other, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!